Hello, welcome to another episode of the Puzzle Podcast, wherein Isaac and I tackle difficult business questions. We bring forward our first-hand experience from the business, suffering, succeeding. You pick your choice, and we openly and candidly discuss these questions. We give ourselves 10 minutes because we like to keep it on point, practical, pragmatic, and we also invite your questions, feedback, comments because that's what we like, building on things that matter to practitioners like us. Today we have a provocative question asked from the perspective of a person, not necessarily how we would ask each other, but that's why I think it's worth bringing it. And I don't want to say allow because I don't have that power over Isaac, but I encourage us not to discuss the question in advance so we get the rawest possible sentiment. And the question is, I'm trying not to make the voice. Why won't my team innovate?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, Bruno. Why won't your team innovate? What seems to be the problem? What could be the problem?
Yeah, just reading the question, it has that energy of kind of almost disrespectful energy.
Yeah.
It's kind of the problem isn't me, the problem is them. Why aren't they doing the thing? And to me, the question, if somebody would come to me in person with this question, is I would internally probably have similar reaction to you, but in reality, what I would probably do is just as that person, tell me more, please, because I would like to hear from them what were their expectations, what's their relationship to the team. Like, is this team actually reporting to them, or is this team reporting to somebody else, but their output is somehow connected to the person asking the question? Because one potential route I could see this go is mismatched expectations. Like there was something that this person was expecting and is perceiving this team as failing to deliver. That would be one direction. There is also a tinge here in this question of potentially power struggle, internal politics, and this kind of things. Unfortunately, I have seen variants of this question: why won't team X do Y? Like, why are they not doing this? And very rarely in my experience has the asker been entirely innocent.
Yeah. And you can flip it. So I would also, I agree. There's so many layers. I would do two things. First of all, take the question apart. Why? So somebody's looking for, are they looking for an explanation? Are they looking for a justification to give themselves, are they complaining? Is that person complaining to you to make themselves feel better? So there's a psychological aspect. Why won't my team? So my team, what does my team mean? As you said, are they reporting to you? Does your performance valuation depend on them? Are you in charge of something that they deliver something towards of value? And innovate. What do you mean? Why won't they innovate? As we discussed in the previous episode, first of all, we need to agree that some words have certain meaning. Otherwise, we're discussing around nothing. And the second part is, I would flip it around and say, why should your team innovate? Assuming that we have covered what innovation means, that it's your team and all that, and why you're asking, it's an honest question, it comes from an honest place. Why should your team innovate? People focus too much on why people do not do some things. So what is the blocker? And my experience has been, when you typically look at what's stopping someone from doing something, you assume that the person, for some reason that is inexplicable, they are not behaving as you would like them to. But you need to flip around and say, okay, why should they innovate anyway? It's like the previous question of the previous episode. Why should anyone buy your product? It's not, why are they not buying my product? No, it's, why should anyone buy your product? What is the motivation? Why? Okay, you can tell me 1,000. We can come up with 1,000 reasons why they do not innovate, and you are so good, but they do not innovate. Then we turn to we versus them. But think about what's in it for them. You can be very cynical about this. I don't want to say that everybody has to have I don't know, like a monetary reason to innovate or anything, but think about it. Under which conditions would people innovate? What are you doing to actually help them achieve that goal, instead of saying, oh, there's a roadblock that either it's in them, it's the people's fault, or the system has issues that we need to take away. Think about under which conditions would people innovate? How would you know anyway? How do you know that they're not innovating? It's another good point. How do you know? What do you see? What do you observe? And therefore, go back to definition of done, right? Okay, they're innovating. How do you know? So it's such a densely packed question loaded with potential ego issues that it's a horrible question, or at least the phrasing. That's why you saw me, I agree, reacting like this. And flipping it around can be very powerful.
So playing off, completely agree, kind of reframing the question here is the key. And again, we are both operating from the assumption that this person has good intentions, but they might, phrased it clumsily, but we're assuming they have good intentions. So a good or potentially helpful reframing of the question is to go from why won't my team innovate to how can I help my team innovate?
Yeah.
So this person, because they're using my team, we are assuming you're in some position of power. So instead of going from accusation, looking to potentially assign blame or things like that, you go from the position of your own power. What can I do as a leader, manager, whatever, to help these people innovate? And that still leaves you room to kind of define what's innovation in your organization, etc., etc., etc. And another connection or parallel I'm drawing with this question is, again, I had this experience quite often where people are not asking maliciously, but they approach me and say, Bruno, we would like our people to be more creative. Why aren't they creative? We provided XYZ, we send them to this kind of trainings, we had this kind of speakers. Why aren't they creative? And they're not doing that to put blame on them. At least they're not approaching me in that way. But I do see some parallels in that, because those leaders are genuinely confused. But the answer lies in what you were discussing earlier. Why should they? That's one, like, okay, so you did all these things. You did, I don't know, brought in bin bags, repainted the walls, and now you have like these fancy walls that you can use instead of whiteboards, and you have this like community events where you bring in people like me and others to talk about innovation or creativity. But this is not telling them to be creative. You're just showing them cool stuff, because if your structures, if your objectives, if your ways of work are not changing, why should they change the way they work? You just show them cool things, but why should they change their behavior? If you want them to start changing behavior, then you have to put incentives for that. And incentives here, I'm not thinking money or anything, but kind of, put where your money, where your mouth is, right?
Yeah, I think that there's, for all the talk about design thinking, empathizing with the user, with the customer experience, user experience, for all the kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya around those topics, so many people in a business, they still struggle to apply the things that they preach as blah, blah, fluffy words, to apply them in their organization. So why would somebody innovate? How will you know that what is your vision? If you're asking this question and you're good-natured, it's a question asked in good faith. Why won't they innovate? It means that in your mind, you already know what you hope the target state would be. But for whatever reason, you're not making it clear, because either you have made it clear and the others are not latching onto it to actually act accordingly. Or the thing is, very often is you have it up here, but you never bother to put it in words and to understand how this that you would like others to bring forth can actually be done, under which conditions, for which reason, for what motivation. So I would like really, to people who have this kind of a question, and often, as you said, it comes from a frustrated place, even if it's good-natured. Just, okay, turn the lens on you. Like, what have you done to do this, and what is your vision anyway? help others understand what you would like them to see. Maybe they don't want this that you want, then you have a different problem. But at the very least, instead of saying, oh, innovate, fluffy words mean nothing, take your vision, put it in some kind of I don't know, write a letter, write like a, what they call now pre-mortem, right? Our project failed because we didn't innovate. Okay, what does this mean? We didn't do this, we could have done that. Okay, now we know what I would like to have done. There are all those behavioral tricks you can do to trick your brain to put into words that which you find difficult to express. And it can be very powerful, because then you can, after you portray your vision or your idea of where something could go, then you can start debating whether this is achievable, under which conditions, whether people have an interest in this, what kind of incentives you could set up, what other disincentives exist, why the system is not supporting that vision to come to fruition. But you have to know what you want, and you have to tell people what you would like to see, not just say, just leave it in a cloud of potential and then say, wow, they're not innovating. We need more clarity, right? We have said this a couple of times in this podcast. We need to be clear about what we would like to see, and then discuss with others whether that what we would like to see is actually realistic. Maybe they do not innovate for things that are totally outside of your control, and you're sitting there frustrated, lashing yourself like, oh, maybe I should be a better leader, they're not innovative. No, it does not depend on you. This is also an interesting finding. Yep. Not everything depends on you.
I completely agree. Perfect time to start wrapping this question up. So to sum it up, try to reframe the question. So instead of why won't my team innovate, how can I help my team innovate? Second, this is I would put it under the umbrella of alignment. So especially if you're in a position of power, leadership, etc., don't assume that everybody understands where you want to go and where you want to arrive. That is part of leadership responsibility, to make sure that team, you, whomever else is doing the work, is aligned. Kind of what are the expectations, what's the end state, and that's best done not necessarily in I'm not saying, or Isaac didn't also mention it, like written contracts or anything, but it's good to create some sort of artifact. Yeah. Be it team mandate, whatever, one pager where you say what's the goal, what's the end target, etc. That doesn't have to be something fancy, but anything that will help you clarify what is this that you're trying to achieve together.
To this, imagine the Agile Manifesto. Some guys gathered up in some mountain lodge and put together what basically amounts to like a project team charter, you could call it. And it had such a big influence. You don't need to change the world with something like Agile, but yeah, the written artifact in a team, if you actually go through a sensible workshop where you put everyone together and you all discuss openly about what it is that you want to achieve, and you see that people latch onto this, can be amazingly powerful. And it's not the value of it is not written on the paper. The paper is just it's the paper artifact that came out of it. Also, the signatures on top is like whatever. They don't have any legal. You're not going to sick the culture police of the company on them. But the process through which this was discussed, their opinions were heard, nuances were brought to the surface. That is what will potentially energize people and give you the insight about how that which you imagine can bring the behaviors forth.
Completely agree. We have another broken promise, but hopefully, dear listeners, this leaves you with some ideas what to do next. Either if you're a person who feels like it, or you have heard a person close to you ask something like it. As always, we invite your comments, questions, even difficult questions like this one. That's what we like to wrestle with from practice, pragmatic thinking that hopefully is useful to you and others. Until next time.
Goodbye.